So hello, my name is Ray Poynter, and in conjunction with Zappy Store, we're going to be looking at the skills needed to prosper in an automating world. So the agenda for today is a little bit of background, and then about the need to choose to succeed. Success won't just happen. You have to make a decision that you're going to succeed in this changing world. We're going to look at some strategies for success. We're also going to look at what happens if you don't want to use automation, if you want to be a craft, artisan, skilled, doing it your own way, not part of a machine. Well, there are some options for that. One of the questions I frequently get asked when I'm running workshops or webinars is, what would your advice be to a new researcher? So we've picked that up, but we've also picked up a session where we're going to provide some advice to veteran researchers, a little bit of a summary, and then we will take Q&A. And with any luck, the Q&A will be facilitated by Betty Adamu, who works a lot with NewMR these days. So a little bit of background. Automation is probably the hottest topic in market research at the moment. There's a new GRIT report coming out any day now. It's got a substantial section in it written by me about automation, who is using what platforms are being applied to what sorts of techniques. And this is a follow-up on the study we did in the GRIT report last year. Last year, Lenny Murphy and I produced this report on automation, looking at the drivers, the background of the story. That is why the GRIT report is so interested in this particular area. We have this series of webinars, and each of the webinars is accompanied by a report. So you can look at the background, look at the references, and rather than just listening to me, you get the shared views of Stephen Phillips and myself in the report. All the time we're talking about automation, we should remember the 4 key benefits: cheaper, faster, scalable, better. This doesn't mean that every automation achieves all 4 of them. In fact, some automations fail and they don't achieve any of them. Some of them are cheaper, some of them are faster, some of them are better, but not necessarily cheaper or faster. But we're always looking to achieve all 4 of these. And whenever we think about strategies, we want to think about how can we maximize the chance of getting all 4 of these, and how can we maximize the chance that these will be good for me personally. I want these benefits to be good for my company, and I want these benefits to be good for me personally. So back to a Latin phrase here, decimation, the removal of 1/10. Quite often we hear people use the term decimation very loosely in the media. And it sort of means a really big clearing out of something. And PwC have predicted that over the next 15 years, robots will take 38% of jobs across the industry, not just the market research industry, but the whole industry sector in USA, and 30% in the UK. Really quite a monumental shift. Our prediction is that within the UK, there will be a lot of jobs disappearing. Maybe 25%, maybe 30% over the next few years. But there will also be new jobs created. And what this means is there are winners and there are losers. And my challenge to you is, what are you going to do to make sure that you are amongst the winners rather than amongst the losers? So here's a lovely quote from Deming, which I think sums it up. It's not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory. So this particular image here is taken from the UK. We used to have canals carrying all sorts of goods and commodities up and down the country. They didn't change, and they were outcompeted and replaced by the railways. So we saw this massive shift. The railways in turn were largely competed out of business by lorries and containers. Containers also having a massive effect on dock workers. But there's another side to the story about canals, because they have been reborn because they did change eventually. And now there is an enormous leisure industry in the UK of people hiring these boats and going around the country in a different sort of way. So if we change, we can make great use of things. So what are these skills that I am talking about? Well, I'm going to start with an idea that Simon Chadwick of Cambiar put forward probably a couple of years ago now. And he did a lot of work with clients, he did a lot of work with agencies, and he came up with 3 skills that he felt were really needed and in short supply for a new age. The first was consultants. More people who can diagnose what the client really wants, not just do what they say, but understand the background problem, the equivalent of systems analysts in the software world. People who could understand the bigger picture, who would look at the research, who would fit it into a bigger picture, who would fit it into the client's business picture and make strategic recommendations. And that's what he means by consultants. The second are the specialists, and specialists can be programmers, they can be experts in R, they can be data visualizers, they can be ethnographers. As long as they are clearly specialist in their area, then they will be in great demand going forward. And finally, we have this group, polymaths, who are people who are skilled in multiple areas. They may not be consultants, but they have a good grounding in qual and quant and business analytics and statistics. Or they may have a really strong bent for intercultural studies and quantitative analysis and data visualization. So we need more people who are able to bring these multiple skills. So the consultants, the specialists, and the polymaths. So have a think to yourself, which of these would I like to be? Which of these is most attainable for me? And maybe make that part of your plan. So I had a really nice dinner with Tim Buck, the founder of Q Research in Sydney, with his colleague Sarah and my NewMR partner Sue York, and we were discussing the implications of automation techniques and software innovations. And I'm not quite sure who came up with the phrase. Maybe it was Tim, maybe it was me, it's hard to say. But this is the key point. When experts are in short supply, we need automation to help our people be more productive, because we would like to use a lot more data analytics. We would like to use a lot more analysis of images and videos. We would like to do a lot more analysis of spoken word and of the written word. To do that, at the moment, we use really expensive people. If we can make those people massively more productive, we're not putting their jobs at risk, we're making them even more valuable, but we're getting more output. We're producing something that is scalable and something that is better. So this is one of the key roles for some of the newer types of automation, the automation that's using AI and those sorts of things. Here's one of my popular comments really. If there are waves, surf. And I have to say, I am shockingly bad. It takes a while for the person with the camera to get a clear shot of me actually standing up. But nevertheless, the point is valid. Don't moan about the waves. Learn to surf in the environment. So be the person evaluating automation. If in your company or your department there's talk about automation, be the person who's introducing it. That is the safest and the best job to have in that context. Be responsible for piloting new approaches. Be the person who trains others how to use the automated approaches. That makes your role more indispensable. Join or ideally lead cross-disciplinary teams looking at new ways of working. And then help create and deliver new outputs when introducing automation. So don't just use the automation to do what we used to do, faster or cheaper. Look at it and say, what else could we be doing? How can we take this to new places to generate new outputs? You need to learn the key lessons. You've got to dare yourself to get in the water and surf. So find out about new approaches, read articles, listen to webinars like you are doing today. If there are free trials of software for dashboards and things like this, take them up. Go on courses if you can. Do free online courses with Coursera and these sorts of things. Share what you have learned. In terms of your safety and your ability to utilize this new learning at work, you have to let everybody know. 360 degrees, the people next to you, the people above you, the people below you, everybody should know that you know this sort of stuff without being brash or over showy. Do it by sharing information, do it by helping, and that's a better way of making sure that everybody knows that you're into this stuff and that you're moving with the speed of business. Be the first to be trained in new systems and approaches, and do this thinking out the box all the time. Come back to this every month. Don't just be doing. We spend a lot of time doing at work. Stop and say, is there something else we could do? Is there something that is being done manually elsewhere that we could do in our automated way here? Could we use this as a springboard to be able to do something completely different? One of the great things for employees, and actually for employers, but they may not see it quite so quickly, is that many of these skills are more portable than they used to be because of automation. So first of all, we have standardization. This is the keystone. You can't have automation without standardization. The basic units have to be designed so they fit together, they can be replicated, they come in consistent shapes and sizes. That leads to the automation. That generates, of course, new skills, how to use these tools, how to produce new outputs, how to design projects in the context of all of this. That's generating portable skills. For example, recently, an Australian report found that if you learn one skill for a specific job in this automated world, you typically gain the skill for 13 jobs. So they looked at that in terms of jobs advertised, like 2.5 million jobs advertised, looked at the way the skill bases were going. And when we learn these new skills, we're learning skills for multiple jobs. Now, that's obviously an advantage in terms of being able to move from employer to employer, but it's also an advantage for employers because it's more likely that you can recruit people who have the right skills when the skills become more portable. So, do you want to be an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur? So, if you do, you want to create services around things like open-ended coding. So it's an area where people know they would like to do more. We all collect more open ends than we use properly. There's a real demand to utilize new techniques to go there and say, can we generate much better insights? We would love to use more image and video. At the moment, video takes about 3 hours to process 1 hour of actual video if we use humans. We need to use automation to make our experts more productive. So there are real scope for new tools and extending tools in this area. Non-conscious measurement. This is a really hot topic. People are fascinated by it. They know that some of the ways we've done business in the past don't work as well as we thought they did in terms of conscious and unconscious, system 1 and system 2. But very few of the new non-conscious measurement tools are scalable. They're not easy to reproduce. They slow the whole process down. IAT, implicit association testing, is probably the only one that is making really big ground. So if you can come up with some more automation in the area of non-conscious measurement, whether it's voice, biometrics, facial coding, that is cheaper and faster, then you are likely to be successful. And more uses of mobile. Mobile is enormous, but nearly all mobile is people doing an online survey on their mobile device. There is so much more scope, and what we need are systems which are faster and cheaper. And if they're not faster and cheaper, they have to at least be faster, because nobody is going to slow down their business in order to utilize your new ideas. So it needs to be highly automated, really plug and play as a method of going forward. What about if you don't want to be creating a scalable enterprise, doing work in 50 countries, making a smaller margin but a large amount of money? Well, there are plenty of people who will go another route, and they will be the research artisans. And they will focus on things that can't be automated in the next 5 years. Presenting, ethnography, advanced analytics, ad hoc solutions, strategy, anything that really takes people to people or takes art is going to be a really good place to be if you want to be the artisan of the future of the research world. But even in those cases, you want to use technology to enhance your skills. Craft brewers use new tech to be able to produce great beer. A good friend of mine runs a craft brewery in Nottingham, and he has got some great technology in his brew house, producing really traditional tasting beer. The artisan baker are using really great ovens and great processors. A lot of the modern artists are using really sophisticated digital tools in order to make their art sing and come alive. So we need to think about that. If you want to be an ethnographer, what are you going to use in terms of more data collection tools, Internet of Things, automatically triggering cameras, voices, being able to search and analyze to make yourself much more productive so you can do more and better work with your skills. One of the surprises, this is a book that I'd certainly recommend, Customer Success, is that I think one of the growth areas is going to be customer success managers. We are going to see more and more customer success managers, particularly in the automated research companies, the companies offering platforms, software as a service, people whose job it is to make their clients successful, to understand what's working and what's not working, to help them through the process. And that isn't going to be automated for a long, long time. So there is a really big need for people to understand that if you are a platform, if you are a mainstream commoditized supplier of market research, your main task is to make your customer successful. It is not to do ad testing, it's not to do copy testing, it's not to do ideation. Your job is to make your customer successful, and that's very much a people job. So we come now to the advice to new researchers. Learn the basics. So there's a lot of fantastic stuff out there, but you need to know what the scientific method is. You need to know what happens when sampling goes wrong. You don't necessarily need to know how to do sampling, but you need to understand what sampling is and what happens when it's done badly. You need to understand the basic pitfalls in questionnaire design. You might never write a questionnaire in the future world of market research, but you should recognize a good questionnaire from a bad questionnaire. And when you get suspicious data, you should have a good understanding of how to go back to find out what might be making that data not as good as it should be. So there are courses, the MRS runs courses, SMR runs courses, AMSRS runs courses. In Canada, the MRIA run courses, Research Rockstar runs courses, the University of Georgia run courses, and that's an online course, and I'm one of the content authors, so I'm going to give it a plug. But as a newcomer into market research, make sure you understand the basics. Then start developing some real skills. And this comes back to the experts part of Simon Chadwick's 3 skill bases. The first place to start is becoming really good at something. And it almost doesn't matter what the something is, as long as you like it, it doesn't drive you crazy, and you become good at it. So it might be translating questionnaires. It might be moderating focus groups. It might be moderating online focus groups. It might be doing advanced analytics. I don't really care. Pick something and become an expert in it. So other people come to you. They'll say, oh yeah, when I need to know this, I'm going to see Sue. or when I need to know about this, I'm going to go and find Joe because they're real experts in this field. And then look within your organization for the innovative teams. In most organizations, there are teams that try the new stuff. They fail more often and they succeed more often, and life is sometimes a bit bumpy, but that is where you're going to learn more. You're not going to learn by doing really responsible work but having nobody around you. It's better to have people around you than be given those really key tasks. Best of all is to have people around you and be allowed to take on key elements of the role as well. But make sure that you're in the innovative, happening team. And then tell people, create a brand for yourself. With social media, it is really straightforward. There are more and more opportunities out there now to enter young researcher competitions, to be first-time speaker competitions. Look at the webinars as well. They can sometimes be a chance for you to speak at. Offer to write blogs, offer to write things internally, run training courses internally. All of these, what you're trying to do is create a brand for yourself as part of thriving in this automating market research world. So what about the veterans? Well, Archimedes said that give me a long enough lever and I can move the world. And if we think about problems, the big red problems that we're tackling, we have the fulcrum, the blue circle. And when you're early in your career, you don't have much that you can lean on to push and change the world. But as your career lengthens, particularly if you make sure that you learn different things and you don't just keep repeating the same processes, your lever gets longer and longer. And all of a sudden, that red problem looks so much easier to move. So if you are a veteran, you should be thinking about, do I want to be a consultant? Do I want to be a polymath? Do I want to be an expert's expert? And one of those special categories as well is the super safe pair of hands, the person who's done it all before. But again, you need to create a brand around that so that you utilize it. Here is one of the tips that I've said before. I passionately believe in this. I certainly follow this. A new skill every year. So languages, ethnography, improv. I'm amazed at how many people I've spoken to in the last couple of years who have started doing either drama or improv or stand-up comedy as a method of making themselves more confident, but actually getting new skills for how they facilitate and moderate groups, new skills for how they deal with clients, new skills for presenting, coming from those arts background. Of course, storytelling, but maybe you want to do semiotics, data visualization, statistics, coding. If you've never done any coding or programming, you should. Going forward, it's going to be important that everybody understands the power and the limitation of coding. You're probably not going, if you're 25 or 30 and you've never done any coding, it's not going to be your career, but it will be a useful skill. It will help you work with people who do coding in a much better way. And of course, presenting skills and these sorts of things, they're all important. You can't do all of them. Each year, new skill, pick it up and run with it. So, in summary, jobs are going to be lost in our industry. I think that over the past 20 years, we have probably lost about 1 million jobs in the market research industry. Now, most of you listening to this webinar will not have been involved in those jobs. They will have been people who were knocking on doors, conducting interviews. They will have been people in central locations conducting interviews. They will have been people doing interviews in telephone calls. They would have been people in the print room printing questionnaires to post them out to different parts of the country. They will have been people punching the data in. Every paper questionnaire in the old days used to be punched in twice with these special machines clacking away, and we punched them in twice so we could compare the numbers. All of those jobs and many more like them have disappeared. But now it is beginning to be people like me and you that are seeing this happening to our jobs. So quite a lot, maybe 25% are going to be lost. Plenty of new ones are going to be created. So we need to make sure that we are winners in that context. If there are waves, learn to surf. Don't be worried about automation. Grab it. Don't be worried about the predictive analytics and the new ways of doing business. Take them on board. If somebody is introducing automation in your company, make sure you are in that team. Just keep your ears open. Make sure that you move first. And research is changing. It's less about methodology and more about clients and customers. Because when the product is standardized, when we know what sort of sample we're going to use, when we know that the questionnaire has already been written, when we know that the basic analysis process is there, the only point of difference is choosing the right option and then interpreting that and providing the advice from it. So it's going to be less and less about designing a sampling method, designing a questionnaire. Those are not going to be part of the research processes for most individuals. Most individuals, those are going to be givens. But you will need to really focus on what your clients and customers need. So the clients are the people buying the research, the customers are the people being researched. It's all about those two groups of people. It's going to be less and less about the methodology. And seize the opportunities. It's a great time to be in research. Research is going to become more and more fascinating. We're unlocking new doors. The advent of non-conscious measurement, predictive analytics, big data, Internet of Things, or mobile in the moment means that we can get to more and more situations. We can provide more and more insight to clients. There has never been a better time, provided we believe it and we seize the opportunities. So thank you very much, and I look forward to Q&A and questions.
Yes, hello Ray, and what an inspiring webinar. Thank you very much.
I am so glad to hear your voice.
And as I am to hear yours. Okay, so we have a question coming in from Twitter from Luca Meyer. A really great question. Do you see artisan research evolving faster in some geographical regions or industries even?
Yes. Funnily enough, I did a presentation last week for SMR in Shanghai, and one of the big drivers of where things can happen is how big a market is financially. So something like 44% of all the market research in the world by dollars is done in North America. Over 80% is done in Europe and North America. It is much easier to get a nice artisan research niche in Europe and North America than it is in, say, Thailand. The second element is that the more mature a market, the more brands have to go even deeper. And in a couple of weeks, the next Grit report is coming out. The most innovative clients tend to be people like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, who are selling products that are, in tangible terms, almost indistinguishable from their competitors. So they have to go into the emotions and this deeper level. So I think it will be easier in mature markets and bigger markets.
Right, okay, well that answers that quite succinctly, and I hope Luca is happy with that answer as well. So I've got a couple of questions for you as well, Ray. So Ray, of course, the end of your webinar there spoke a lot about advice for veterans, advice for new researchers, and actually those things don't really have anything to do with automation. But would you say that these ideas that you're sharing for, learning a new skill every year, are they in the long run, do you think, sort of tied up with the industry's move to automation? Absolutely.
Because of automation, things are going to change faster. So you need to be nimble. You need to have an adapting set of skills so that you can move. Because some of the changes caused by automation will not be predictable. And they will create some jobs which are kind of tedious, like the production line job of putting the back wheel on the car. But they will also create lots of situations where what we want is flexible people who can think on their feet and who can come up with new things. And that's where the skills comes in. It makes you flexible so that you can respond quickly.
On to my next question, Ray. Now, as you know very well, I think it's very safe to say I am of the more artisan approach. And it's my belief that actually artisans and those who are responsible for creating automation tools should work in harmony together. But would you agree with that? Do you think that actually in a world where we are moving towards more automation, we actually should have more artisans who can develop those automation processes or outputs with a kind of unique selling point? So actually market research agencies have sort of a unique selling point, a differentiating factor from one agency to another.
It'd be interesting to know, just at the very last comment, what will be the differentiating factor in the future, because some things are going to become increasingly standardized as we all start using, and I can see that we've got Torben Lusden online, so I will throw out there, if we start all using office reports and things like this to produce the outputs, then it comes down to what are you going to do as an agency if you've all got a very similar toolkit to produce a better service. So I think that will be part of it. However, I think most artisans will be to one side. I think we will see a growth in the number of 1 person, 2 people, 5, 10 people companies, global combinations of small numbers of people who are able to leverage all of these tools. The sort of way that Kevin Gray does in Tokyo, working globally in advanced analytics, that is because of these sort of tools. And if we think about what you do, Betty, you use a lot of tools like Camtasia and like art and design packages, which are automation, in order to be able to do the artisan work. And I think that's the point I'm making, that if you want to be a semiotician, if you want to be an ethnographer, think about which technologies you want to use to be able to produce these outputs. So if we just jump to some of these questions, Betty, and then if you can keep an eye on Twitter.
Yes, of course,
from Peter here, how would you place ease of use in the automation key benefits? Absolutely essential. If you don't get ease of use, it doesn't matter how good it is. And that ease of use can be a little bit deceptive sometimes. So we know that the really good platforms, you look at the iTunes and things like that, ease of use is a really big part. Uber is based on automation. It has good ease of use. So all of those drive things forward in a strong way. But ease of use means not having to learn how to log in and password and things like that. So lots of companies have created reportals and dashboards. And very few clients end up using them on a regular basis. They often demand them. They're there in the procurement process, but they're often not used because you've got to remember how to log in. You've got to remember how to access them. It's easier just to ask your client to send it. Another question from Peter, who is not a consultant, specialist, or polymath? The very large percentage of existing researchers who are doing, and coming back to a phrase that Tim Bock uses when he's talking about the automation of a lot of analytics processes, a lot of what we ask researchers to do at the moment is clerical. Check the questionnaire, send it back out, bring it back in, organize this. So I would say the best 25% of qualitative researchers are specialists or polymaths or consultants. But I would say there's 50% out there who are going through the motions. And I'd say it's exactly the same with quantitative researchers. There are lots and lots of people who are simply going through the motions, and they are the people most at threat from automation.
Well, it's like you're saying, there's sort of the very important administrative duties, which, without which many companies would fail. And then you've got the artisans and the people who are responsible for automation, growth, sort of working in harmony together. I'm assuming, Ray, what you're saying is you can't really have a market research business where there aren't those three things working together in harmony in some way.
You can have a straightforward automated shop that's bringing in and sending stuff out to specification on time. So the equivalent of the quick fit exhaust companies who will change the exhaust on your car, who do a specific thing. So in essence, this is what Zappy Store does. They've got some other services as well, but if you talk about the core thing, somebody logs in, they get a Millward brand link test, they get the results, they've not spoken to anybody. That service is all about automation. So you will be able to run a panel company or a trekking company or a platform which doesn't have consultants, specialists and polymaths. However, if I'm advising people about which skills they should follow in order to maximize their sales, then I would say you want to be one of those three, or you want to be a customer success manager, or you want to be in sales. I see sales being human for a long, long time to come.
Yeah, as do I. So I don't know if there's any more questions.
Yes,
should we go through them?
Quite a few.
Right, okay.
So Cornelia, hi there, asking whether I would recommend any AI summits. Well, NewMR have got an AI event coming up in September, so we are still looking for speakers for that, in the sense that the call for synopses hasn't closed. We've got plenty of synopses, but there's always room to look at more, so that we pick the absolute best. Beyond that, I would say have a look outside market research. And Betty, you went to an AI event recently.
I did, yes. I went to the New Scientist, which some people might know very well. It's a magazine with an online companion. So they run what they call instant expert events, and their artificial intelligence event a couple of months ago now in London was just absolutely fantastic. So you had people from Google DeepMind talking, many leaders in the field working within research facilities at universities, and we've got one of those speakers hopefully speaking at our NewMR AI event, so that's very exciting.
And now we've got a question from Torben. How does all this match the conclusion that PowerPoint remains the absolute leading delivery method and it's increasing? This is a very clear process that's been happening, and where we see the consultants, they tend to be doing something different. So they're the people who will run a workshop debrief, or they will do, as we saw Annelies Verhagen demonstrate from Insights a couple of years ago, have an installation where people have to go through and receive it. I'm not terribly worried about the delivery mechanism. At the decision-making point, it's usually word of mouth more than anything else, and it's usually one or two charts. And those charts are pictures, they're not PowerPoint slides. They may have been created in PowerPoint, but at the level you've gone from the agency debriefing to the insight manager talking to the brand manager talking to the executive VP of the function, and they decide to take some action. We are talking about a very small amount of data, a very small amount of visual material, and a strong story. So all of that goes on, and I am not worried if PowerPoints and Excel stay prevalent in the process. There is one danger with automation, in that I see some people offering a system which says we can automate producing every possible PowerPoint page from this data set. And that is the last thing in the world you want. You want to use the technology to suggest which ones you should be looking at, And what is not unusual, if we talk about the grit report, for example, I have produced my section of the grit report using Excel charts and Word. That's gone across to Lenny Murphy at Greenbook with about 10 other people contributing, but graphics designers will then turn that into the finished product. It doesn't hurt the finished product that I use Microsoft products in the way. We had a question here from Claire. A lot of resistance from clients who feel investing in automated research is more than they can afford. And if the clients know they are automating the research, they can't charge as much. How can I address these concerns? What is quite interesting, and I'm giving you a sneak peek now from the research we did for the grit study that's going to be published shortly, is there are two groups of people who are automating the most. Agencies whose revenues are expanding and clients whose budgets are shrinking. And so we've got very different drivers going on there. We've got people who are basically optimistic about the future. Their revenues are rising, so they want to be able to put money into growing even faster. The key element of that, out of all of those four of faster, better, cheaper, scalable, is scalable. If you're a fast-growing agency, scalable is actually the critical element of those four. And clients who are seeing their budgets erode, well, cheaper followed by faster is driving that sort of process. So that is kind of the combination. Agencies will not be able to charge more for products going forward. We have seen this again. I was presenting at the SMR APAC, and what we saw from the data is that globally prices for research are falling, particularly for basic data collection type research. And that is a natural trend. It's nothing to be worried about. We need to make sure that the price of consultancy and the price of thinking and the price of being artistic don't fall, because there is no reason why they should. But the price of all the bits and pieces of the components and anything that can be automated will fall. So agencies should expect to charge less. Clients should be saying, why am I being charged the same as last year? Surely you've automated some of this by now. And moving forward with that process there.
Okay, wonderful. So earlier you suggested that if you are somebody interested in automation within a company, you could, join a team that's really interested in innovation and train other people in automation and share ideas for automation within the company. But what about those who, and I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this, might have a little bit of pushback within a company who might not be interested in automation, not for financial budgetary reasons, but just because they've been doing the same thing the same way for a long time? Do you have any tips or advice, or even sort of recommended journals, articles, books that could be used almost like a power-up? So if you're giving a presentation trying to convince people to go down an automation route, then you might have some words of wisdom for those people.
Yes. One, almost never try to persuade people to do things they don't want to do. And two, if you're in a deadbeat company, shift.
That was a very simple answer. Very, very simple answer. Okay.
So we've got another one in here from Benjamin, so from eTabs. Hi, Benjamin. Good to have you on the line. And he's talking here, he's seen a lot of small and medium-sized companies using automation. Yes, but I suspect you will find their revenues are growing. So this revenues are growing isn't a feature of large organizations. In fact, some of the large ones have got some significant problems. But when we look at the data, and it's a trend, it's not an absolute rule, the people who seem to be investing in automation the most are those whose revenues are growing and who expect their revenues to grow next year. It's not often a defensive strategy from a research agency to say, our revenues are falling, we better invest in automation. They probably should, because they need to get their cost base down. But it's difficult when you're in those sort of situations. So it's not that I'm saying the large agencies are the ones adopting it. It's people who see their revenues going up, whether that's small, medium, or large.
Right, and obviously they have that finance there to invest. Okay, any more questions from the webinar platform, or do we have time for a couple more from me, Ray?
Well, we've got one more from a clarification from Torben, who is talking really about where the automation should go, and that we've automated the tabulation process for a long time. We have, but unfortunately, we've automated it in some senses the wrong way. And it's not a criticism, because you have to go through stages. We made it easier to tabulate lots and lots of things, but actually that made the job of finding the good stuff harder. And what we're beginning to see now are different ways, and I know your product has got it, Torben, and some of the others have, of visualizing, of searching, of extracting. Likewise, I know that eTabs is helping this as well. So instead of using automation to produce ever larger amounts of information, using it to produce less but more relevant information is the next step. And then the step after that is when you start to use AI to really probe in that information. And that is where I think we're going to see things going.
Right. And Ray, earlier you mentioned that people could really kind of get involved in areas of non-conscious measurement, and you mentioned IAT, implicit association testing. But apart from IAT, do you have anything in the non-conscious measurement arena that you've seen that's excited, that's been sort of coupled with automation?
No, most of it that's exciting is not coupled with automation. That's why I'm saying this is a real opportunity, I think, for people to look at that and say, okay, how are we going to bring that through? Now, there are some automated voice analytics. There are some automated facial coding systems. They haven't sold me yet on they're answering the right problem the right way, in a way that's reproducible. But I think that is the sort of way that we need to be going. There are some interesting things being conducted in social research with the use of smartphones picking up biometric data. And again, that is interesting, but we need it to be very quick to set these things up. We need them to be scalable. We need them to be no more expensive than other products. Cheaper is obviously good, but no more expensive. And we need them to have some degree of being better. If you're doing that amount of fuss, they've got to deliver something. And there is a bit of a tension. I saw a nice presentation from Skim last week, where they were looking at some different ways of doing scaling. But there's a real tension. Do you say we are producing data that is better? Because if you do, you're saying we're producing data which is different. Yeah. And clients love better and they hate different, and better is different. So we have a tension there. Oh, it's quite a long one from Liz. Pro users say it helps to get beyond the others. It should help us to get real insights. It's also freeing us from the shackles of some of the awful corporate processes. However, one of the concerns I have is that we need to ensure we maintain and grow research skills amongst new and veteran researchers alike. Otherwise, we risk both the ability to grow new tools and understanding and the ability to deliver intelligent and informed insight. How do we best avoid this potential automation without any input? Also known as garbage in, garbage out trap. I think that what we are moving away from, and Pete Caper's got from SSI, has got a really nice presentation on this, where he talks about how in the old days we used to learn things by being sat next to somebody who knew. Learning from Nellie was the sort of the HR term for that. So you would go and do groups with somebody who was good at groups, and then you'd talk about the process. You would check tables with people who were good at checking tables. You would write questionnaires with people who were good at questionnaires. But as we're moving into this more automated world, it's really hard to learn things that way. So we are going to have to move to proper learning. Somebody setting up a learning framework with pedagogic principles, probably with certification so that we know what people are doing. But the next challenge, and I'm involved with 3 universities in terms of courses. And the challenge we face is making sure that we're actually teaching the right thing. Because if you talk to industry experts about what people need to know, they say, oh, everybody needs to know about sampling. Well, actually, almost no researcher in the future is going to design a sampling system. They're going to take data that's gone through a sampling system. So they need to know what happens when it goes wrong, what they should look for, what questions they should ask, but they don't need to know how to do it. They don't need to know that the standard error is the standard deviation divided by the square root of n, but they do need to know that it's more important to reduce heterogeneity than it is to increase the sample size, which is the same thing as the formula, but said in a different way. So I think we need to be thinking more and more. I think that trade bodies need to keep pushing the case for professional training and accreditation, and we just need to shift the older people who are reluctant to improve their skills and say, no, everybody needs to do this process.
Right, and Ray, that brings me on very nicely to my next question. Now, Ray, you've obviously been working in the market research industry for quite some time, so I think it's safe to say that you would fall into perhaps the veteran category. But you always keep yourself really in the know with lots of different new methodologies and processes, and of course, potentially part of that is of course the NewMR platform. But what's the best way that you find that you keep yourself not just up to date, but specifically on learning about progress in automation in and outside of market research?
Well, I'm a big fan of reading The Economist and The New Scientist in terms of what's happening outside of research. And interesting enough, when I listen to people like Kristen Luck and others talk about how they stay up to date, they all have some favorite magazines. They're Wired, or they are Forbes, or they're something, Fast Company. So you need to take information from outside our industry to get a bit of a benchmark for where we are. And then I think you need to follow some topics. So you can do that via Twitter. You can certainly follow the Green Book blog. So that has a post most days. And what you will do is probably ignore 3 out of 5 of them, because you can't absorb everything, but you'll see some stuff coming through. Bob Lederer has a video every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They take 10 minutes and they will tell you some of the topics that are going on in the industry. There is a backlog of those. If you go to YouTube, you can pick up on those, and that's a nice, easy way. If you can get somebody to send you to a conference, then absolutely go. If you can't get them to send you on a training course, if you can, and in the lunch times and the coffee breaks on the training course, talk to the other people about what they are doing in their company, because you will find that as useful as the main part of the training in many cases.
Well, that's really great advice, Ray, and thank you for your time answering my questions and, of course, the questions from the audience.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Betty, and we will call that a